All right, we're joined by Chad Bishop, Georgia Tech beat writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So, amuse us, Chad. What's it like down in Atlanta today?
Well, it's not snowing, okay, but it is cold. Like, it was in the low 40s this morning.
Oh.
It's in the 60s all week. So, yeah, well, I'm a little miffed because it was like 90 on Thursday, and now it's kind of chilly.
It's
and
25 here.
Quick Blink 182 story. When What's My Age Again came out, I was in the car with my father on the way to high school, freshman year, and they were like, here's a new song by Blink 182, and the opening words to that song are not something you want to be listening to with your father. So it was a little awkward, but I always remember that ride to school that morning.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, Chad, we brought you on, obviously, to talk about the two latest additions to the Syracuse men's basketball team. And let's start with Naithan George. And, he had a fantastic year, led the ACC in assists. I know Cuse fans are really excited about this young man joining the program. Were you surprised, first and foremost, that he hit the portal after that year, and then he ended up at Syracuse?
Yes and no. Here's a couple reasons. Nate George, for context, would not be where he is without Georgia Tech and Damon Stoudemire. I mean, the kid, I remember when he recruited in the summer of 23, and I called him to talk about it. And it was reported that he was the class of 24. Like, he should have been a freshman in 24, 25. And he was like, no, I'll be there on Sunday and start school on Tuesday. And I'm like, excuse me, what's going on? So, I mean, that's how under-recruited he was, is nobody even really knew what class he was in. And he only had one scholarship offer, really. He was going to go to Seattle University to play his basketball freshman year. So Damon Stoudemire gave him a shot and threw him into a system and started him in the starting lineup in November. After they got blown out at Cincinnati, and he's flourished ever since. So I thought there'd be some loyalty there to Damon Stoudemire. Now, the flip side is he's played at a really high level, and Georgia Tech has not won a lot, and he's a very, very competitive kid, and I think he wants to get the NCAA tournament, and I think he wants to play somewhere where he can play in front of a lot of people. I mean, Georgia Tech's fan base has been dwindling. They had their lowest attendance really ever since they started tracking it this past season, and they only had 1,600 people show up at the NIT game, and I think some of those factors played a part that he's a kid, from Toronto, from that area, so to speak, and wants to play in front of a big-time basketball crowd at a big-time basketball school, and I think those were factors as well.
Going into the offseason, fans were saying that this team needed a difference maker at the point guard position. You had a chance to watch him up close and personal here for a couple of years. Would you describe Nate George as a difference maker at the point guard position?
Yeah, he can be when he's on. I mean, he flirted with a triple-double in the ACC tournament. He can really facilitate an offense. What we'll be curious to see is, we talk about in football, right, a quarterback being a system quarterback. Is Naithan George a system point guard? I don't know that. I mean, he flourished in Damon Stoudemire's pick-and-roll system, getting the ball to center by Ndongo, getting it to forwards who are cutting into the lane. Can he run different types of offense? I think that remains to be seen. But if they can put him in a position to be successful, then definitely. I mean, his scoring came along. He really developed a mid-range jumper game. He can shoot the three a little bit. It's not the best part of his game, but he can sink them from time to time. So if he can continue to develop and they put him in a system and a position to do so, then, yeah, I mean, he can average 14, 15, 16 a game to go with those 6, 7 assists per night.
How is he defensively? That was the big problem for Syracuse this past year, was playing defense, and point guard was probably the most glaring position.
Yeah, he's got some work to do there. I mean, I'll be honest with you. He's not going to be the best defender on the court. But, again, it's about development and improving these kids' games. So if he can really crack down, and I'll say he's gotten way better defensively than when he was first thrown out there as a true freshman. But, he's not the quickest guard defensively. That's something he needs to work on. But, again, it's all about development and being put in the correct position. And if he dedicates himself to his game defensively over the summer, I think he can make a big leap. It'll really just be up to him to make that leap.
All right, so he is the first of 2 Georgia Tech transfers that Syracuse has signed within the last week or so. Ibrahim Soare, I think I'm saying that right. He's the 6'9" forward, started 14 games, did not start in the ACC tournament. Tell us a little bit about him and didn't get a ton of time there. Do you think it's a playing time decision why he decided to transfer, change the scenery? What was going on with him behind the scenes?
Yeah, another interesting case is a young man who redshirted a year ago, came from Africa and is a very bright young man, speaks multiple languages, French being probably the premier language outside of English. And this past season, it really wasn't expected to play a whole bunch either, but Georgia Tech was so decimated by injuries toward the end of the year there that he had to start. They really didn't have a choice in terms of their lineup and how many bodies they had left, and he did an admirable job. I mean, really fell into his role of being a defensive presence in the lane and a guy who grabs a lot of rebounds. He's not going to score a lot of points. He's not going to do a whole lot for you offensively, but defensively, he's a shot blocker. He can fill up the lane. He can, like I said, rebound on both ends of the floor, and really played that role remarkably. So I'm curious that he left as well because, Damon Stoudemire, when talking about Ibrahim, use the word loyalty, right? A guy that was loyal and stuck around the program, and then lo and behold, he's out the door. I think, you guys may be able to check on this more than me now at this point. I think it could have been a factor where he was really, really good friends with Nate George and vice versa. And maybe they were looking to go somewhere together. I don't know if a package deal is the right phrase, but I think those guys may have been looking, if they were going to go anywhere, maybe they could go somewhere together. And that's why Ibrahim decided to leave along with Nate.
It would make sense. We were going to ask you the same question if they were good friends, and because we were kind of scratching our head thinking the same thing, that maybe they were a package deal. They decided very close together in terms of when they were coming here. You talk about he's a defensive presence. Going back to what Paulie's question was about the point guard position, that was an issue for Syracuse last year. Defending the pick and roll was an issue for Syracuse last year. It seems like he's more athletic than what the Orange had on their roster with Eddie Lampkin. Is he pretty good at defending the pick and roll? Were you able to kind of see that down the stretch of the season?
Well, he should be, because that's what he sees every day in practice, right?
Yeah, right.
Going against Georgia Tech's offense. I think athletically, he can be very, very good defensively because he is so long and he can affect shots and change shot trajectories. I think Ibrahim's problem early on in his career was confidence, like it is for a lot of kids. And when he started to play more toward the end of this last season, you could see his confidence grow. I go back to the game they won at Clemson in triple overtime. Oddly enough, his mother tries to watch or listen to or stream every single game, and that was the one she missed, and it was Ibrahim's best game of his career. I mean, he had so much energy. Everybody else is dying toward the end of that game, and Ibrahim is running up and down the floor and pumping his teammates up, and really became a factor defensively in that game, too, against some of Clemson's bigs. So, again, it's sort of like Nate George. He's not going to be the best defender on the floor, but he does have the ability to be very good defensively and improve very much defensively. And again, these guys are getting older, they're getting wiser, and I think that's going to help them down the line as well.
We were talking before you came on, Chad, about the revenue share and how Syracuse was planning to split the money up. We've heard a few athletic departments go public. Georgia, I think, was the first where they talked about how they were going to divvy up the money, 75% going to football, and most of the rest going to men's basketball, a little bit to women's basketball, and then, the rest they would divvy up among the remaining teams. Do you have a feel for how Georgia Tech is going to handle the revenue share?
I haven't heard any specifics. It's funny you mentioned Georgia there, because when that happened, I immediately called up the folks at Tech, and they were like, nope, no way. No, You're not going to hear that from us. Jay Batt, the athletic director, is so ultra competitive. I mean, he is a very competitive guy and wants to win at the highest level. And he's a UNC grad, so he knows how important basketball is in the ACC. He's got a coach in Damon Stoudemire going into his third year. He just hired a new women's coach, Karen Blair, who was introduced yesterday. I don't think basketball is going to be put on the back burner at Georgia Tech. I think football is going to get the lion's share, like it is at a lot of schools, because it brings in the most money, right? But I don't think it's going to be a case where Georgia Tech just forgets about basketball. They have such a rich basketball history with the coaches that have come through here, with the NBA talent that has come through here, and in the area of the country that they're in. And people do love basketball in Atlanta. So I think Georgia Tech is going to do what it has to do to stay competitive when it comes to this revenue sharing and divvying it up between the sport. sports. And I'll throw baseball in there, too. Baseball is very, very important to Georgia Tech, so I think that's going to get a good chunk of it as well. And, again, J-Bad's very competitive athletic director. He wants Georgia Tech to be at the forefront of college athletics, and he's going to do everything in his power to help these coaches out when it comes to this issue.
Since we brought up football, let's go there next. Syracuse and Georgia Tech played last year. They will play again this year down in Atlanta in what is it, late October, I believe they play. 2 full years under Brent Key, winning seasons in both cases, 7-6, 7-6, went to a bowl game both years. I know it's super early and spring practice is going on, but what are your expectations for Georgia Tech football in 2025?
Well, it's been a little bit refreshing. I think everybody knows that this is sort of the year that Georgia Tech needs to make that jump, and it's not something they're shying away from. I've talked to Brent Key at length about it. He knows. He knows it's out there. He knows that this team is in a position to get to maybe 8 wins, 9 wins, dare I say 10 wins. The tough schedule to start out, going to Colorado and playing Clemson at home. But after that, it's not as difficult as it's been in the years past. And starting quarterback Haynes King is back. Starting running back Jamal Haynes is back. 2 starters on the offensive line are back. A new defensive coordinator, Blake Gideon, who came in from Texas, and we all know how good Texas is. So all the pieces are sort of there for this Georgia Tech team to make that next step. Again, a manageable schedule relative to how it's been in the last couple years. Got some of their bigger games at home, and they play Georgia at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and they've been oh so close to beating the Bulldogs the past couple years. So, yeah, I mean, this team has a lot of confidence that if they stay healthy, they can make some noise in that ACC title race.
You know, Paulie, we keep saying that, Syracuse has all these tough games away from home. I don't know if you're aware of this, Chad, but SU plays Notre Dame, Miami, SMU, Clemson, and Tennessee, all away from the Dome. We might have to add Georgia Tech to the list. Yeah, we might have to add Georgia Tech as another tough game away from home.
And we know about the Fran Brown, Brent Key drama from last year, so there's a little spice there, right? I mean, I think there's a rivalry brewing all of a sudden, and Georgia Tech does not play Miami. They don't have to go to some of these, they get Virginia Tech at home, and one of their toughest road games this year is Duke, right? So, it's a very, very manageable schedule for this Georgia Tech team.
Real quick, you brought up the whole drama from last year. I heard all the pregame stuff. I heard how Brent Key talked about Fran Brown in his press conference, and then Fran took exception to that, and so on and so forth. Did Brent Key ever address that after the game, or the following week about? Was it a misunderstanding? It seemed odd that, Fran was talking so lovingly about Brent Key, and then Brent Key was like, yeah, I barely knew him. And did he ever address that after the game?
Only in the sense that he, at least publicly seemed kind of confused by the whole thing. I don't think Brent Key even realized that what he said or what he didn't say could be taken. I don't know if out of context is the right phrase, but I think we got the sense that Brent Key didn't really even know what we were talking about when we tried to ask him about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm sure he understands now, and I'm sure he's been told all off season about the drama surrounding that. I think it's pretty much understood that Coach Brown took some stuff and used it to motivate his team masterfully so.
Sure,
got them to play at a very high level. Yeah, I mean, that's what you're supposed to do as a coach, right? But I don't, if we ask Brent Key about it today or July or in October, I think he's going to have the same responses. I didn't really know anything about it, and it wasn't my attention. And but I do know he'll probably choose his words a little bit more carefully this time around.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, Fran Brown publicly, it sounded like he was very offended. And as you said, he did a masterful job getting his team ready to play, and they played very well that day. Chad, thanks so much for the time. This was great insight. We appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can talk again during football season.
All right, guys. Call anytime. Thanks.
All right, Chad Bishop from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
I'll call him tonight.
He did say anytime.
Yeah, so. I'll be like, hey, you got any more Blink 182 stories?
All right, we'll take our final timeout. We'll wrap things up next on ESPN Radio.